The human experience of displacement. There are moments in history when the ground itself seems to move beneath human feet. The 20th century was filled with them. Wars, revolutions, collapsing empires, events that didn't just redraw borders, but uprooted lives. Millions were displaced. And displacement, as it turns out, is never only about geography. It's about identity. It's about orientation. It's about meaning. Today I want to sit with the human experience of displacement. Not as a political abstraction, but as a psychological and existential reality. Drawing on reflections from Karen Armstrong, Viktor Frankl, and the lived experience of Edward Said, we'll explore what happens when home is lost, and what, if anything, remains. The weight of displacement. Throughout the 20th century, displacement became a defining human condition. Entire populations were forced to flee, sometimes overnight, leaving behind homes, languages, rituals, and the quiet familiarity that gives life its shape. And this wasn't merely a logistical problem, it was a psychological rupture. Karen Armstrong, in The Spiral Staircase, describes exile as more than a change of address. It's a spiritual disruption. Home, she suggests, is not just where we live. It's the anchor around which identity organizes itself. When that anchor disappears, people don't just feel lost. They feel unmoored. Anthropologists and psychologists have observed something similar. When cultural roots are severed, individuals often experience a kind of fading, a loss of inner coherence. Without familiar reference points, the self can begin to dissolve. Edward Said articulated this pain with piercing clarity. For him, exile meant living between worlds, carrying memory like a burden, while trying to construct meaning in a place that never fully feels like one's own. His reflections reveal how deeply identity is entangled with place, language, and shared history. To be displaced is to ask a question that may never fully go away. If I've lost my place in the world, have I also lost who I am? Searching for identity in a foreign land. Displacement doesn't end when someone reaches safety. In many ways, that's when the harder work begins. Migrants and refugees are often asked, implicitly or explicitly, to integrate. But integration isn't a simple act of blending in. It's an ongoing negotiation between preservation and adaptation, between honoring the past and surviving the present. You see this most clearly in families. Traditions are kept alive at home: food, language, rituals, while children absorb a different culture through school and peers. Parents hold memory. Children carry possibility. And between them, tension quietly grows. Even small things, like cooking familiar meals, become acts of resistance and remembrance. Recipes turn into lifelines. Ingredients become symbols. And yet, even here, change creeps in. Tastes shift. Customs soften. Something is always being lost, even as something new is formed. Entire communities try to recreate what no longer exists. Festivals, neighborhoods, shared rhythms. These spaces are both beautiful and heartbreaking. They offer belonging but also underscore absence. For many, identity becomes layered rather than rooted. Belonging becomes partial. Home becomes plural. And that tension doesn't resolve. It becomes part of how the world is experienced. The existential undertow of displacement. Karen Armstrong describes displacement as a loss of grounding, a removal of the fixed coordinates that once made life intelligible. Without them, people can feel suspended in uncertainty, as though the floor has dropped away. This is where Viktor Frankl's insight feels essential. Frankl, writing from the depths of unimaginable suffering, observed that even when everything is taken from a person, one freedom remains: the freedom to choose one's response. Meaning, he argued, is not something life gives us. It's something we create in how we respond to what happens. For displaced individuals, this becomes the central task. Redefining purpose after the map of existence has been torn apart. And sometimes, quietly, improbably, that work succeeds. Refugees build businesses. Migrants create new art forms. Hybrid cultures emerge, not as compromises, but as original expressions. These are not just survival stories. They are acts of reinvention. They don't erase grief. They don't undo loss. but they testify to something enduring about the human spirit. Even when the universe collapses, people adapt. They rebuild. And sometimes they discover unexpected beauty in the process. Displacement is one of the deepest wounds a human being can carry. But it also reveals something fundamental. Identity is not only inherited, it is continually remade.